All right, so let's get started. So again, welcome. If this is your first Women Who Code event, we're glad to see you here. If this is your second, third time, we're also super happy to see you here. If you don't know anything about us yet, our mission as an organization is to inspire women to excel in technical careers. And we're a global nonprofit organization. We're in, I think, I want to say 400 different locations around the world. So it's not just US locations either. We have chapters in Europe, in Asia, and many other places around the globe. Our vision is a world where women are represented as technical executives, founders, VCs, board members, and software engineers. In terms of the Boston network, we have about 6,000 members and growing. We have about 2 to 4 events per month, and they're all free for everyone to join. We have events ranging from ones like this, which are tech talks, and social nights as well. Though social nights, we haven't really done much of it recently, considering all our events are currently online. So we're still trying to figure out what that could look like if we run an online event that's also social. We also occasionally do study groups. There's an event that we run called Algorithms, where if you're trying to look for a job, if you're a student who wants to do more interview practices, that's a great place to go. We group you together with 2 to 3 other people, and you get to practice algorithms together. We also have panels and workshops. And yeah, a big part of who we are is the community and networking aspect of it. So we also have a Slack channel. If you're interested in joining that, that's a great place to network with people, other women who are in part of the community. Yeah, and last but not least, we're here for you. Louise was asking in the beginning, like, are we all volunteers? And the answer is yes. The Boston Network consists of a few directors and leads who all volunteer part of our time, and this is a nonprofit organization. So at the end of the day, we're really here for you. If you have suggestions for different kinds of events that you would like us to run, definitely message us. If you're part of the Slack channel, feel free to message us directly or stick around after the event and we can chat for a bit. So yeah, if you aren't already, I would highly recommend you to sign up on our womenwhocode.com website. And as part of the community, you get a few different things here. So there are coding resources, sometimes there are scholarships, and I'll talk a bit about that later as well. And yeah, it's really, if you're not already part of the community, I would highly recommend joining. Before we proceed forward, I also want to mention that we do have a code of conduct. Long story short, we want Women Who Code to be an open community that's inclusive to everyone, regardless of gender, gender identity, sexual orientation, religion, and so on. So if you at any time feel uncomfortable, feel free to reach out to us and we'll make sure we take care of that. So yeah, we have 2 really awesome speakers tonight, and I'm really excited to introduce them both to you today. The first speaker is Allison. Allison King is an engineering team lead at Cortico, a nonprofit organization with the mission of building systems which bring underheard community voices to the center of a healthier public dialogue. She does full stack engineering most of the day, but also spends a large amount of time reading and writing fiction. She's going to talk to us today about writing Git hooks. All right, so yeah, Allison, feel free to take it away. Allison, we can't hear you.
Hello?
Yep.
All right. Thanks. Sorry about that.
No worries.
And thanks for the intro. All right. Everyone see my screen okay?
Yep. Looks good.
Great. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to be talking about Git hooks and why you might want to write one. And to motivate that talk, I'll talk about why I wrote one. I was never expecting to write one, but one day I did. So I think this is the part where I normally talk a bit about who I am, but I thought I'd show a picture instead. So I drew this picture of myself, a self-portrait, And this is what I look like when I'm at work. I normally do software stuff. This is a picture of me after work. You can see it's mostly the same. I switch positions a little bit. And so after work, I typically like to read and write. And so that's a picture of me writing, which is a very similar position. So I'm going to talk about how my writing and my software lives converged and how that ended up in my writing a Git hook. And hopefully some of the story shows why you might want to write a Git hook and how you would do it, even if you just do it for fun. So an important part of writing is reading what you write. So I guess that's the editing part. And I like to think that most of the time my writing is quite pleasant and happy. There's sunshine and happy music and people telling good jokes. But recently, when I was rereading something that I had written, it was unusually dark. So there was heartbreak and danger and people not telling jokes. So I wondered what was going on in my life at this time that made me write this way. So you all saw the pictures of me at work and me at home. And there's nothing too dramatic going on there. So I would start to wonder, okay, maybe it was something that I was reading that affected my writing. And I thought about it, and I realized that this was the book I was reading. I don't know if anyone else has read this book, but just in case, I picked out some quotes from reviews of the book. So this is Elena Ferrante's Neapolitan novels, the first of which is My Brilliant Friend. And so some highlights include perfect devastation, gorgeous savagery, and this last one was on the copy that I had, which was gritty, ruthlessly frank, barbed fury if Jane Austen got angry. So you can see it's quite an emotional book, and I guess when I was reading this, it rubbed off on my writing in some way. So in my day job, I work more with networks and data, so I started thinking, what if you could track what a writer was reading at the time that they wrote a scene? Would you see similarities and be able to track influences in their writing? So here's my idea. What if every time I committed my writing, I could automatically append to my commit message the names of the books I was reading? This only works because I happen to use Git to version control my writing, which I don't think a ton of people do, but I figured it'd be fun to work this into my existing workflow. And the logical way for me to do that, I realized, was to write a Git hook. So the general flow would be I would write something and then I would commit it. So that's my normal flow, except during the commit, basically a secret thing happens, and this is where the Git hook comes in. And that secret thing would scrape the Goodreads API. For those of you who don't know, Goodreads is a website where you can track the books that you're currently reading and have read, which I happen to use as well. So it would scrape the Goodreads API, parse out the names of the books I was currently reading, and then add them to my original commit message. And all of this would go on without me doing anything. The only thing would be my commit. Like after you type in git commit, whatever, that step would take a little longer for it to do the query for Goodreads, but I wouldn't personally have to do anything. So here are the type of Git hooks that exist. There are a bunch of them, and the ones on the right are all of them, whereas the ones on the left are just the commit related hooks. So you can see there's pre-commit, which is one example of why you might use that is to make sure your tests run before you commit, and that way you're not committing code that might fail your tests. There's prepare commit message. This one, I think the example would be like if you had something that was auto-generating commit messages, you could put in a hook there to edit it. I haven't personally used that one before, but it might be useful. Commit message is the one that I ended up using. So the example there is you can edit your commit message after you've submitted it. And then post commit is after the commit is made. So let's say you want to send a notification to somebody saying like, Allison just made a commit. So those are the commit related hooks. And basically Git will run through this cycle of all of them. And if you have a hook in the right place, then it will execute it at that cycle. So actually, if you were to open up your terminal right now and type git init, which is a typical way to start a project, you would get this .git folder, which many of you have probably seen before. And if you were to ls into it, so list out the contents of the folder, you would see that there's a hooks directory, and inside it comes with all these files that end with .sample. And the reason why they end in .sample is because they don't actually run when you, so by default, they don't run at all. They're just examples that you can look at. To run it, you would just remove the .sample at the end of the file, and then it would actually run. So you could try that out if you wanted to. This is what is inside the commit message .sample file. So you can see this is bash. I don't know about you, my bash is okay, but I don't think I would know what this was doing without reading that comment. So I thought, oh no, I don't really want to write my Git hook like this. But I do use Python pretty often. So instead of all these scary Linux bash commands on the left, like sed, curl, awk, xargs, I hoped I could use nice Python libraries that I was used to working with already, such as requests, XML to dict, which proved very useful because the Goodreads API returns XML. And Click is a CLI library that helps you build CLIs. And the good news is that you can write it in Python. And in fact, you can write your Git hook in any language that your computer can run. Since Git hooks only run on your machine, that's you can install whatever language you need and it will do it. So basically at the top, this is a pretty common thing you might see in some code files. You see it a lot with bash files. In this case, I put, okay, this is running, this language is Python 3. If you want a node for JavaScript, you could put user bin and node instead. If you wanted Ruby, you could also put user bin and Ruby. I haven't personally tried those, but they should work. And so this is the actual code that is in my Git commit, my hook that I wrote. So I made this helper library, the library I called what you're reading. So from what you're reading.goodreads, import get currently reading. So this is just an abstracted function. And basically what it does is it queries Goodreads API for my personal shelf of currently reading books. And that's abstracted away into a function. And then I just append the books to the existing commit message. So basically, this with open sys.argv1 is a little confusing, but basically it's reading in the commit message that I wrote. So I might have said like git commit -m my first chapter. So this would read in the file and it would read my first chapter. Next line is if there are books that I'm currently reading, it would append this header called books reading. And then for each book, it would write out the name of the book I was reading. So to install, you basically just copy that file into your .git folder /hooks and then commit message. So the next question is, what about dependencies? So I mentioned earlier that I wanted to use these nice Python dependencies. And the problem was that I did not want to just include like in the entire request library in my .git hooks folder. That doesn't really make sense. So basically the solution to that is you can package up your Git hook. This varies by what language you're using. I put a link to how you would ship your Python package. This is a talk from PyCon 2019. That's very clear about how you would write your Python package. I'm sure there are similar ones for JavaScript and Ruby as well. But basically you just say, here are my dependencies for my package. And then when you go to install your package, it'll also download all those dependencies to your computer as well. So it installs it at your computer, but not in your Git hooks folder. So for your next novel, you could do pip install. That's the Python way to install what you're reading is the name I call my package. And then this is just some, I mentioned I wrote a CLI around this so that so I could configure things like my Goodreads API key. So you can say what you're reading install, what you're reading config, and then you would write your book. and then you would commit. So git commit -n my first chapter. And at the end of that, this is a sample Git log. So you could see, I made this a few weeks ago, my first chapter, and then you can see it appends books reading. And then I happen to be reading these 3 books at the time. If you want to look more into what's going on exactly in there, you can check out the repo. It's at that link at the bottom. And I want to emphasize that this is an example that is extremely specific to the type of person that I am. But that's one of the really nice things about Git hooks, is that you can have them do whatever you want for your own purposes. This hook isn't installed for anyone else who uses this repo. So it's not like you're forcing this onto your teammates to peek at what books they're reading, but it's very much on a personal level. There are other tools that I'll get into in a bit that do install it for everyone who uses your repo. But in this case, it's just for yourself, and you can customize it to your heart's desire. So here are some other goofy ways that people have used Git hooks that you may have heard of. There's this one, Pavino, which I actually looked at this library source code a lot to figure out how to write my Git hook. But this adds a random emoji to your commit messages, so that's kind of fun. There's lol commits, which you need to install some like video related software in order for this to work on your computer. But like I mentioned, as long as since your Git hook is just running on your computer, it will just use the dependencies that you have on your computer. And it takes a picture of you whenever you make a commit, and then it puts like in a meme font your commit under the image. And this image, like I said, it's all locally done, so it's not uploaded anywhere. You can feel safe about your repository of commit pictures. More legit ways that people use hooks are auto formatters are a big one. So for example, let's say you're in the habit of, or your team is in the habit of running prettier on your JavaScript files and something like black on your Python files. So those are both auto formatters that ensure that your code is following the repo's coding standards. You could do this in CI, so that's a little, I don't know, it's all personal preference, I guess, if you want to do that. But in this case, it will run it even before it gets committed and pushed. So that's kind of nice. You don't have to do another commit that's like fixed formatting. You can also have a hook that, for example, detects that you like left some debug statements in your code, or that you're missing semicolons, things like that. Or you could spell check your commit messages. Saves yourself from some embarrassment maybe. And then there are also tools to help you with your Git hooks. So Husky is a pretty popular one for JavaScript, and a lot of JavaScript packages have this package.json file, which helps you with your dependencies. Husky does a thing where it will add a Husky block, and then it will say like, these are the hooks that you can add. So you can see here it says like pre-commit npm test. So before you commit, it will run npm test and make sure your stuff's okay. And yeah, like I mentioned earlier, since this is done at the package.json level, that's a file that everybody pulls from the repo. So that's why they can do it on a per repo basis, as opposed to just your personal Git repo. And pre-commit is a pretty popular one too, because it's not language specific. You can do multiple languages, and it was actually built to solve the problem of you have hooks written in a ton of different languages, but it's different than like maybe you're just a Python repo, but your hook is in Ruby. You don't want to figure out all the language differences there. So basically you specify a config file, and then you run pre-commit install, and it'll install all your hooks for you. So on the right, I just put a configuration file that says like, so from this repo, grab these hooks. You can see black is down there. Black is the Python formatter I personally use. And that's a quick way to go and grab that and run it on your code. This is another thing that it doesn't automatically put it on all your team's repos, but if you write this YAML file on the right and you commit it, then if somebody went and ran pre-commit install, then they would get all the same hooks as you would. And that's pretty much it. I just listed some references here at the end that I found helpful either while I was writing this hook or putting this talk together. And yeah, so I hope you can try out a Git hook for yourself, and maybe it will solve some problem that you never knew you had. And feel free to contact me if you have any questions about it. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Allison. That was great. I especially loved your usage of stick figures and cats. Love that. I know we have a question from the chat. So the question is, hi, Allison, what would be an example Git command in its totality, including how you inject your Git hook? Or does the Git hook not need to be specified in the Git command?
Oh, right, yeah, so the Git hook doesn't need to be specified. So actually in my, and tell me if I'm misinterpreting the question, but so you would still just do git commit, but in the background, Git itself goes through all these lifecycle stages, including like pre-commit and commit message. And then that's when it checks all the files and says, oh, you have something here. Let me run that thing at this stage. So you don't personally have to do anything.
Yeah, Ruby, if you want, feel free to unmute yourself if you have a follow-up question or anything like that. All good?
Yeah, that was really helpful. I was actually just wondering, so is it kind of like a package you would be installing beforehand?
Oh, yes. Yeah, so in the case of the little Git hook that I wrote, you would install it first before you do any commits. And that's the same for other hooks like auto formatters and stuff. You would typically run something like pre-commit install or Husky something, and then it will install it for you. In the case where it's a really simple thing, like the thing that a lot of, if you look inside the git/hooks folder, those all should probably run out of the box. I don't think they have any dependencies. If you just wanted to add like, I don't know, smiley face at the end of all your commits, then you could do that without any dependencies except to move that file into your git hooks folder.
Cool. Okay, if there are no other questions, we'll move on to the next speaker. Thank you again, Allison. That was great. All right, so moving on. I'm really excited to introduce Louise. So, sorry. Louise is an exuberant coder who moved to America in 2016 from Ireland and returned to coding after a varied career in all aspects of technology. She's learned the latest technologies, React, Node, JavaScript, all the cool stuff, and found a great company to grow with called WorkGrid. She's currently building AWS serverless apps to improve employees' workday and trying to change the status and mentor more females to code. One fun fact I want to point out here is that Louise actually got a scholarship from Women Who Code, and this is I guess her special tie to Women Who Code, and that's kind of why she wanted to give a talk today and give back to the community, which I thought was super cool. So yeah, without further ado, take it away. I was gonna say like give her a round of applause, but that's gonna be really awkward because we couldn't hear anyone clapping. So
I should be clapping for you guys actually. Okay, this is my first tech talk for all of my exuberant coding and all of my enthusiasm